May the words of my mouth and the meditation of each heart be pleasing to you, O God, my strength and my Redeemer. Amen. Good morning. Can I just tell you now that I both love and hate this passage from John's Gospel? It's true. If you were at 8 o'clock last Sunday or another liturgical church, then you heard about the disciple Thomas who doubted. Today, for many reasons, you get a doubting, perplexing Tammy. But if you just hang with me this morning, I think we can get to some good news. I'm a 39-year educator who began as an English teacher, and my favorite part of teaching English was teaching kids how to write. Picture it. Graphic organizers, topic sentences, transitions, details to support your thesis. And these details had to be specific and have a purpose in order to move your story and argument forward in an organized, easy-to-follow manner, resulting in a nice, tight essay. All the good stuff. All the good stuff. I have also shared with you previously how after some negative experiences, I abandoned church and the Bible for decades. Instead, I read books and listened to others speak of spirituality and other means of having relationship with divine. One person that I read and listened to extensively was retired Episcopal Bishop John Shelby Spong. He wrote books such as Reclaiming the Bible for the Non-Religious World and Resurrection, Myth or Reality. Another favorite was Marcus Borg, who wrote Reading the Bible Again for the First Time, Taking the Bible Seriously, but Not Literally. And Speaking Christian, Why Christian Words Have Lost Their Power and How They Can Be Restored. I also read Marianne Williamson's A Woman's Worth, which introduced me to the feminine divine. All of these and others created me to rethink everything that I had been taught to blindly believe about God and church without questioning or personal discernment. So bringing those backgrounds with me, I prepare for my sermons by praying and reading a commentary or two. So all that information in mind, when I read the 21st chapter of John, here's how my mind worked. The end of chapter 20 seems like a good concluding paragraph. Jesus did many other signs, but these were written so that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, and through believing have life in his name. That is a good conclusion. But wait, there is another whole chapter. And who wrote this chapter anyway? Because the whole style and imagery changed from chapter 20 to chapter 21. And the scene has suddenly shifted from Jerusalem to Galilee in the Sea of Tiberias. I wonder how much time has passed. And why are some of the disciples named and others aren't? Nathaniel? I never heard his name as a disciple before. Is Peter going fishing because he has fully returned to his previous pre-Jesus life? It kind of sounds like the others are just joining him out of habit. Maybe they're all depressed. They have to still be reeling from this whole crucifixion, resurrection ordeal. And why are they fishing at night? They didn't catch anything all night, and yet this strange, unknown person calls them children. Wow, how awesome it must be to hear Jesus actually call out to you, children. He tells them to toss the nets on the right side. Is that right as opposed to left, or right as opposed to wrong? And why would they listen to a stranger? You know, there have been so many other fishing stories in the Bible, and these guys don't seem to be very good at their job in any of these stories. Is there any place mentioned in the Bible where the disciples caught fish without Jesus' help? Side note, According to the commentary, that answer is no. The disciple whom Jesus loved is the first to recognize Jesus, but he doesn't act. Peter doesn't recognize Jesus, but he does act by jumping into the sea after putting clothes on. Yet today we're taught to take cumbersome clothes off before getting into water. And in all the pictures I've seen, disciples wear like these long robes. How can anyone swim in that? And who is this disciple whom Jesus loved anyway? Truth, I've never gotten a satisfactory answer to that question. The specific detail that they caught 153 large fish seems way out of place. Does it signify that there was an abundance? Or is there a particular meaning to 153 as opposed to 152 or 154? Or maybe it's the author's favorite number, like Mr. Miller always used 417 in high school. That breakfast on the beach seems like a pretty subdued affair. And is it significant that this is the third time Jesus appeared to the disciples after he raised from the dead? And what about that whole raised from the dead business? Was the actual physical body of Jesus raised after 3 days? And there's that number 3 again. Maybe it's a nod to the Holy Trinity. Or was the resurrection, quote, really the dawning of a new consciousness, the birth of a new vision of humanity, the mystical act of achieving oneness with that which is eternal, end quote, as Bishop Spong suggests in his book, The Fourth Gospel, Tales of a Jewish Mystic. Whoops. Here we go into a new story. Jesus is asking Peter if Peter loves him more than these. Who or what are these? The other disciples? Is Jesus trying to rank love here? Or is this just a phrase to stress the intensity of Peter's love? And now Jesus is asking Peter if Peter loves him. How many times? Yep, 3 again. I wonder if my feelings would have been hurt like Peter's. Seems like a pretty normal human response. You know, I just noticed that Jesus is really answering Peter with 3 different responses. I always thought it was just feed my sheep, feed my sheep, feed my sheep. Wow, here comes another hard, sharp turn. Jesus is telling Peter about how Peter's death will happen and how it will glorify God. How did that not blow Peter's mind? And finally, Jesus' simple statement of follow me to end verse 19 seems like yet another great conclusion. But there are 4 more verses to this chapter that aren't even part of this Sunday's reading. I know Episcopalians like questions, but I can't even go there. Right now, y'all are probably either as tired as I am, or you are secretly dialing your cell phone trying to find someone to get me some immediate help. Let me just assure you that I'm okay. I really am okay. And maybe, just maybe, some of you have had questions similar to mine. With so many seemingly different snippets of stories with seemingly unrelated details, how do we make sense of the 21st chapter of John? How do we avoid the trap of arguing, is it real? Is it historical? Is it symbolic or allegory? Questions and arguments that can divide the family of God. I don't know about you, but sometimes I get overwhelmed by all of it. And that is when I tell myself, stop. I tell my mind, stop. And I go to what is for me the foundational verses. Jesus said, you shall love your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind, and with all your strength. The second is this, You shall love your neighbor as yourself. There is no commandment greater than these. With those words calming my mind and my soul, I can look anew at this 21st chapter of the Gospel of John. And what I see is Jesus teaching us how to love our neighbor. Feed my lambs. How precious is the tenderness in those words, instructing us to feed all children, both body and spirit. Tend my sheep. Be a good shepherd to all creation, people, animals, plants, our earthly home. Feed my sheep. None should go hungry. All should be fed with food, love, acceptance. Just as Jesus tended and fed the disciples, Christ still tends and feeds us today. And because God first loved us in this way, we are empowered to go forth, feeding, tending, and loving our neighbor. Even those of us who sometimes doubt or are perplexed or who ask way too many questions. And that, my friends, is good news.